For 25 years, it has served as a formidable deterrent and an indispensable warfighter, and now its future has never been brighter. I'm Colonel Rob Gass, commander of the 7th Bomb Wing, and this is a B-1 bomber.
Enemy troop position spotted north of Fob Delta. Approximately 3 personnel and a civilian vehicle. The enemy vehicle is moving south along MSR Los Angeles.
KAC copies all. Continue monitoring situation. Bone 2-5, KAC. We have an additional tasking for you.
KAC, Bone 2-5, ready to copy.
Bone 2-5. Upon completion of your pre-planned mission, proceed to Kildon's Golf Hotel and contact Axeman 3-1 in support of operations at Fob Delta.
KAC, Bone 2-5, copies all. Take off in 5 minutes.
B-1 has evolved into the weapon of choice in today's conventional overseas contingency operations due to its weapon precision, flexibility, and persistence over enemy territory. However, 25 years ago, it was designed for a much different mission. Beginning in 1960, the Air Force began its search for a replacement for the B-52 fleet. Military planners assessed that the B-52 would be vulnerable to the ever-improving Soviet air defenses. Initially, the focus was on high-altitude supersonic capabilities, which led to the development of the B-58 and B-70 programs. However, with the successful downing of the U-2, piloted by Gary Powers, by a Soviet SA-2 surface-to-air missile in 1961, the playing field rapidly changed. U.S. planners needed to find a new tactic and a new airframe to take on a low-altitude, high-speed penetrator role able to exploit the ineffectiveness of SAMs in low-altitude regime. This new tactic would also eliminate the speed advantage of the fighters and exploit their lack of look-down capability. The new aircraft would be able to fly so low that it could hide itself in the natural contours of the Earth and evade the enemy's early warning radars.
You know, the original bombers were high altitude, so as air defenses improved, the idea was to get down on the ground, get away from the radar, and the B-1 was the first large bomber that we designed to do that from the get-go.
These new requirements initiated a string of programs that would eventually lead the preliminary design of the B-1 Lancer. The B-1 program was awarded to North American Rockwell in the early 1970s, and initial estimates planned for 244 aircraft. But in 1977, that plan eventually came to a halt.
As most people remember, the Carter administration, many in Congress believed the B-1 should never have been built. I was one that believed that it was needed for the young men and women that eventually would perhaps need it in doing the job that they are called on to do.
But by the time that decision had been made, 4 B-1As had already been built, and Rockwell was allowed to continue flight tests with those aircraft through 1981.
We're doing high-altitude navigation equipment evaluations, INS evaluations, radar evaluations, things like that.
Then in 1981, newly elected President Ronald Reagan revitalized the B-1 program.
When I first was asked to work on the program, I hadn't realized that President Reagan was a strong proponent of the B-1, and he felt there was a window of vulnerability in our defenses in the Cold War that he wanted the B-1Bs fielded as soon as possible.
That same year, they authorized Rockwell International to produce 100 slightly modified versions of the B-1A.
The changes that were made in creating the B-1B over the B-1A were in several areas. One was we increased the gross weight of the airplane to carry more fuel and more payload. And then, in addition, we reduced the radar cross-section. I was asked to present to the press on the capabilities of the B-1B. I showed them a chart that showed the relative radar cross-section of a B-52 and a B-1. The B-1's radar cross-section was 1/100th that of the B-52 and 1/10th of the radar cross-section of the B-1A. The payload for the B-1B was significantly greater than the B-52, and the speed was significantly greater than the B-52. We let them know that, and we also by that time had broken 36 world records by the B-1B.
The target for production set by Congress and Rockwell was to have the fleet fully operational by 1987, and the program continued to receive support from the highest levels.
What we were told by President Reagan and the bipartisan Congress that we needed these airplanes as soon as possible. So as we were progressing in our fabrication of the first airplane, he became very interested, and in, I believe it was September of '84, that we got a phone call that they were going to consider coming by the plant to see the first ship in the production line, and he did. And then when he came in front of the crowd that had assembled in this giant hangar, it had on the wall, it had 14-foot high letters, and across the wall where everybody can see it says, "Preparing for Peace." And that was his background as he spoke to the crowd, and he brought down the crowd. We offered him a B-1B hat, and of course he, like an actor, he got it, looked at it, put his hair back, and put it on, and the workers just went wild.
During production, the B-1 program was a model for the military-industrial complex. Not only did they deliver the planes below budget, but they delivered them ahead of schedule.
In fact, we really took what President Reagan said seriously. I really saw our employees as soldiers in the front line of our Cold War.
New weapons assignment. Pre-planned target drop, all 28 Mark 82s. Reserve 6 GBU-38s and 8 GBU-31s for the CAS support. Target area imagery shows valley running north and south and a major road running along the floor of the valley.
The first B-1B was delivered to Dyess Air Force Base on June 1985. The Star of Abilene arrived to an enthusiastic crowd. This first B-1 was delivered a full 8 months ahead of schedule.
The delivery sequence was planned quite a ways up the chain. We knew that we were going to have Secretary Orr, Vern Orr was Secretary of Defense at that time. He was going to fly with us from Edwards to Omaha, to Offutt, and present the airplane to General Davis, and then General Davis was going to be on the delivery sortie to bring it down here to Colonel Rogers, the wing commander. General Davis accepted the airplane from Mr. Orr, and it was interesting, the festivities and the music. And then as they closed that out, we did a post-flight walk around on the airplane and found out we'd trashed 3 engines. So the airplane we were supposed to deliver obviously wasn't going to make it. So they took the B-1B model that was at Edwards being used for test and put the decals on it. So we got on a jet the next day with General Davis, and we flew out to Edwards and taxied up next to the one that was running and got in it and flew it down here for the delivery flight. And everything went on schedule, but it wasn't the real B-1B that we started out in.
The day, 29th of June, 1985, was really a special day. There was 75 to 100,000 people that were there. And we had Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Vesey was there, Congressman Charlie Stenholm, who had been so active with the program, was there, and many, many visitors. And we had the international press. It was an international event.
That day, when we're out there, we're looking for the time of the arrival. The announcer comes on and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, if you will look to the east, you will see a sight that you have never seen before." And so we all looked to the east, and there was nothing there. It was a beautiful, clear day, and you could see forever. And we looked, and all of a sudden there was a little speck, and it took just seconds for that speck to come across at the lowest altitude that it's ever been flown since, full afterburners, and come over and then bank up to the left, and going back up towards the south. All of us, almost to a person, then said, "We're glad that piece of defense of the United States is on our side and not the other side."
The initial operation capability of the B-1B was achieved on 1 October 1986, with the first crew standing alert.
We were in a Cold War situation with the Soviet Union, and the B-1 was a visible commitment of national resources, of the talent, of the funds of the nation towards an aging bomber force.
Many more milestones were realized in a short time. Ellsworth received their first B-1 on 21 January 1987. Grand Forks on 16 October 1987. The 100th and final B-1, 860140, the last Lancer, was delivered to the 28th Bomb Squadron at McConnell Air Force Base on May 2nd, 1988.
When ship 25 came by, we relayed it, 50. There was something special about ship 100. It was quite a spirit of patriotism that our employees worked right to the end of the 100 airplane delivery.
Production and operational milestones were only half the story. It took the dedication of the initial cadre and the first maintainers to realize the aircraft's capabilities and potential.
Well, the initial training for the first 5 instructors for the training school were all hand-picked people. They had B-52 and FB-111 experience. Maintainers had to learn how to maintain the airplane too, so they'd break it when it was on the ground and fix it, and then we'd go fly it for a training sortie.
Our early days in the B-1, we had a lot of great guys at the time that we, needed to bring on a new weapon system, because there were so many challenges bringing on this aircraft that had so many different capabilities that no one really mapped them out.
My crew got asked to go out to Palmdale to pick up a brand new aircraft from the factory, aircraft 6104. That was a treat. Not many people in the Air Force, even in today's Air Force, can say they've actually gone to the factory to pick up a brand new aircraft to bring it on active duty. And feeling the burners cut in for the first time. I'd never flown an aircraft with the afterburner before. When the burners cut in, I'm getting pushed back in the seat, and I was like, "Hold on to your hat, Fred, you're going for a ride."
3 Mustang 03 has you visual.
They're visual.
Hockey 3 copies.
290.
Exxon 41, Bone 25, pre-contact ready.
Bone 25, cleared to contact. We have 40,000 pounds of scheduled offload. Do you require more? Viper flight canceled. Confirm you are taking their tasking.
Exxon 41, Bone 25, affirmative, we can't take more. We're also picking up their tasking.
Bone 25, offload complete. Happy hunting.
The marriage of long-range bombers and air-refueling tankers has always been critical to America's ability to project air power to all four corners of the globe. To fulfill this power projection, the B-1s were assigned to the Strategic Air Command. SAC's bombers and intercontinental ballistic missiles, together with the Navy nuclear submarines, formed an unmatched security blanket.
Well, Strategic Air Command, or SAC as we all love to call it, was the major command that had as its mission the nuclear response, the nuclear deterrent. And their job was to keep two of the three legs of the triad alive, well, viable, ready to respond. Well, the B-1, as with all our bombers, we have put a variety of weapons on there. The B-1, when it was nuclear certified, could carry the two gravity bombs we had, the B-61 and the B-83. It was also originally designed to carry cruise missiles, internal and external, and then came along SRAM, Short Range Attack Missile.
And we would program the SRAM as we would be flying along to launch and then basically fly over the horizon to strike a target as I was en route to it. That being said, when I came into SAC, the entire command, at least in my foxhole, if you will, revolved around carrying the fight to the enemy in Soviet Russia, and that's what it was all about.
Though SAC's primary focus was on the nuclear mission, aircrew trained to employ a conventional role as well.
I'd have to say General Chain, Jack T. Chain, probably really brought the plane further along as far as really instilling a real warfighter mentality.
But the B-1 will also serve a critical part of our nation's conventional deterrent as well. Now, we'll be able to respond globally and rapidly and deliver massive firepower to any location in the world and hold at risk anybody that thinks that they can screw around with the United States.
Designed to deliver devastating nuclear firepower, the principal utilization of the B-1 was that of a military deterrent and a showcase for U.S. power projection.
It was clear the mission of Strategic Air Command, and it was deterrence. To ensure that anyone that wanted to take any kind of actions against us, our allies, or our interest was aware that we had this ultimate insurance policy. And the intent was to preclude someone becoming aggressive with us.
The crews trained to respond to any Soviet aggression within minutes of the base alarm or klaxon, armed with unimaginable nuclear firepower.
Our nation was in a race with a very formidable enemy for a very long time, and the seriousness of that contest is hard to remember now, but the business of pulling alert was deadly serious. We took an airplane for a week at a time, armed with the most devastating weapons that our nation's ever produced. Your job was to get that airplane off the ground at the direction of the National Command Authority.
The objective when we're on alert was that from the time the klaxon initiated to the time the ramp was empty and we were all airborne was 15 minutes or less.
So just to get everybody up and out of there that fast is just gotta, I mean, that's a capability that not even the Russians had.
After launch, you fly a pre-planned profile to the forward area, if you will, where you would actually start to penetrate enemy defenses, and you would tank 2 or 3 times along the way. Once we had hit all of our targets, we would initiate a climb to go to our post-strike base after that fact.
So I often kind of wondered what the impact was of the B-1B program on the changes, the dramatic changes in the global situation. And I'm sure that from the Soviet perspective, it was a tremendous, tremendous influencer as they saw what our nation was doing and the commitment that it had to deterrence.
The crew force, I think, felt like we had been part of bringing to conclusion a huge period of our nation's history by standing on alert in the Cold War and doing it right.
As the Cold War ended, the nuclear drawdown agreements with the former Soviet Union increased the pace of the parallel reductions in the nuclear capabilities of the superpowers.
particularly when the Berlin Wall fell down, or came down rather, you could kind of see the writing on the wall that SAC's mission was eroding, that what it was stood up to do was going to come to a close.
Around 1990, they started looking at what the reasons for the airplanes, its use, and what they can do with it as part of Air Combat Command. And one of the things that the Air Force needed on the airplane was a greater capability to deploy conventional weapons.
By 1991, the B-1 had a fledgling conventional capability with the ability to drop the 500-pound Mark 82 general-purpose bombs. However, problems with its engines and a continuing nuclear alert commitment precluded the B-1's use in Operation Desert Storm.
So over the 90s, we tried to add, we had phases of the program. It was called a conventional munitions upgrade program. But there was phases to add munitions, there was phases to add improvements in the defensive avionics. All that was coordinated and controlled to give a better capability for the airplane in a conventional role.
But Block C was which really started off CMUP. That's where we went from just having Mark 82 only to be able to add in CBU, or cluster bomb munitions, and that sort of took us to the next level. Concurrent with that, it was also the development of tactics and a deployment concept. But up until then, the B-1 did not have tactics built up for a non-nuclear or conventional role per se, and we didn't have a concept for, quite frankly, picking up and loading onto a transport and flying out of town, if you will, to a hotspot. Well, that all had to be developed.
Through the mid-1990s, the B-1 community transformed itself from the Cold War mentality to that of flexible and integrated responses, which finally began to pay off in December of 1998, when the B-1 saw its first use in combat.
The first time that B-1s deployed and dropped bombs in combat was Desert Fox. Desert Fox was a combination of the 37th Bomb Squadron and the 9th Bomb Squadron. Desert Fox's articulated objectives were to convince Saddam Hussein to allow the UN inspectors to come in and inspect their WMD sites.
From an undisclosed location in the Middle East, B-1 successfully struck Iraqi barracks with a barrage of Mark 82s.
The idea was that by striking those barracks and eliminating those inner guard, if you will, for Saddam himself, that would loosen his control of the population. We learned a lot in Desert Fox about package employment, the need to understand defensive counter-tactics.
This successful integration of the B-1 in a strike package validated the effectiveness and abilities of the B-1's new conventional role.
Captain Jeff Tolliver, a 10-year veteran of the Air Force, flew a B-1B bomber over Iraq as we attacked Saddam's war machine. He's here with us tonight. I'd like to ask you to honor him and all the 33,000 men and women of Operation Desert Fox. Captain Tolliver.
Dark Star, Bone 2-5, checking in as frag.
Bone 2-5, Dark Star. Enemy update as follows. Enemy SAMs active and multiple IR missiles throughout the area.
Bone 2-5, dive Cherub spot. Bone 2-5, notch right. Reference 070. Chaff, flares. Bone 2-5, Singer 2, 340. Defending east, bullseye, 21041. Mapping, captured, in target. Dark Star, Bone 2-5, target acquired, within timing window.
The Block D evolution of the CMUP upgrade included an integrated GPS system and the GPS-aided Joint Direct Attack Munitions, or JDAM. This enhancement is arguably the most significant weapon added to the B-1's conventional capability. Block D also included a new satellite communications radio and the ALE-50 towed decoy, which enhanced the already formidable aircraft defense system.
Block D was a big leap in combat capability for the B-1 community. The tow decoy system puts a decoy out behind the aircraft that provides electronic countermeasures to trick enemy missiles to strike the decoy instead of the aircraft.
In 1999, these upgraded defenses of the B-1 were put to their first true test.
Operation Allied Force started in March of 1999. It was an operation that was originally thought to be probably fairly limited in scale, and turned out to be much more than anyone anticipated that it would be. We worked hard to get the B-1 and the B-2 into that fight. And I'll never forget the first night they went into that fight. They were tracked by the SA-6s and penetrated their way on through there, and the countermeasures worked. It was a very successful first flight into combat.
B-1 struck targets in Kosovo proper to physically stop fielded forces, but we also struck targets with coercive value, everything from airfields to specific military industrial areas deep into Serbia. And there weren't any GBU-31s available to the B-1 community, so all we were dropping were different combinations of Mark 82, Confin, with airburst, not airburst. It was the first engagements where B-1s faced visual missile launches, either ballistic or optically guided missile launches, where we had to decide what are we going to do about that. Really, it wasn't something that you can train for, and we had some aircrew that are absolutely convinced today that they were saved by their tow decoys because SA-6s hit the decoys and didn't hit the aircraft.
It contributed quite a bit on all fronts. I mean, you had an airplane that could get from point A to point B at a very rapid rate. It could carry a tremendous load. You know, these were airplanes that were available off the tanker to go do anything you needed them to do. The B-1 and the B-2 and many other sources of air power were able to compel the leadership to do the right thing in the end and to withdraw those forces.
During Allied force, B-1s dropped more than 20% of the total tonnage in the conflict and flew only 2% of the total sorties. They also survived multiple engagements with surface-to-air systems, which validated the B-1's defensive avionics upgrades. With an overwhelming successful combat debut of the B-1, it became evident that the B-1s would provide significant support to any combatant commander if military force in their region had to be employed.
Zone 25, Dark Star. Expedite to Killbox Golf Hotel and contact Axeman 3-1.
Dark Star, Bone 25, Wilco, ETA 15 Mike.
As a result of the attacks on 9/11, in October of 2001, for the first time since the Doolittle raids of World War II, the 34th Bomb Squadron and the 37th Bomb Squadron were deployed together. And from night one of the operation over the skies of Afghanistan, the B-1s were assigned numerous strategic targets and paved the way for coalition ground forces to fully engage the Taliban.
The B-1 plays a very significant role in the sky on a daily basis in Afghanistan, although it's obviously operated over Iraq and in past decades in a host of other areas in the region as well.
When we look at the theater today, the B-1 bomber, the bone, provides the greatest amount of flexibility when we talk about across the entire spectrum of operations. And so my planners, when we look at operational planning for the future in the theater of operations here in Central Command, the bone is always a critical and important part of that.
We'd fly 3 to 4 missions a day. When you took off with the B-1, with the tonnage that we did, with the range and payload that we had, we're able to persist over that airspace. And so we're talking normally 12 to 13 hour missions. We're flying 6 to 7 hours inside the country. Because of the terrain in Afghanistan and how widely dispersed everybody is, you can't just roll your artillery with you. We don't have tanks out there rolling to give fire support. The fire support to our brothers and sisters on the ground are the airplanes that are above them.
In the opening days of Operation Enduring Freedom, the B-1 conducted strategic bombardment plans, but the B-1's ability to endure over potential target areas and deliver close air support for engaged coalition ground forces were key to turning the aircraft into the CENTCOM commander's weapon of choice.
And the great capabilities of the B-1 to be able to light the burner, sweep the wings, and move literally 200 to 300 miles away to support troops in contact was quite an awesome set of capabilities that the B-1 brought.
It's always awesome to have aircraft on station for more than 45 minutes. So when they check on with 4 hours, they pretty much are able to stay on top of our heads for the whole entire mission, and they were willing to help me when I was in bad situations. They've always put bombs exactly where I wanted it, so they're experts at putting warheads on foreheads. I really can't describe it. It's probably the coolest feeling in the world. When you see that explosion, you know that the enemy is dead, and that's another day that you get to go home.
Supporting our troops, one bomb at a time, very precisely located, it's an incredible thing.
The B-1's OEF statistics speak for themselves. While only flying 4% of the total missions in Afghanistan, the B-1s dropped more than 40% of the total weapons and 70% of the precision-guided JDAM weapons. But none of these accomplishments would have been possible without the tireless work of the deployed B-1 maintainers.
There would be 115 to 120 degrees ambient temperature on the ramp, sun beating down on these guys and gals, and they never let us down. They're always there. That's what America needed. A lot of people out there generating these sorties so that the soldiers, and said even the Marines, got the capability and the support that they needed.
While the Department of Defense was engaged in Afghanistan, plans for an additional battlefront were being developed. On March 19, 2003, once again the B-1s were called upon to strike the opening night blow to Saddam Hussein and the Iraqi forces in Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Well, clearly in Iraq, the platform in the early days was able to go in and in one pass deliver weapons on a multitude of targets. And then in the evolution, what we were able to do is to have a dramatic effect when you would have a point target that required multiple DIMPs or the desired impact points, to where the B-1 platform could do that, so you could have near simultaneous deliveries and get the achieved weapons effect, both weapons and psychological effect on the enemy.
But conventional bombardment was not the only role the B-1 squadrons would play in Iraq. On the western side of the country, B-1 squadrons were assigned an additional mission: to hunt mobile Iraqi Scud missiles, a role first seen in World War I when the 9th Bomb Squadron, formerly the 9th Aero Squadron, first pioneered airborne reconnaissance in 1917.
It was a novel use to use the B-1 for what we call ISR, or intelligence, surveillance, or reconnaissance. You know, the B-1 radar really wasn't designed to do that, but a recent modification gave it moving target indicator so that we could see targets moving along the ground. The thought was, let's come up with a plan so that if and when he brings his Scuds out, that we would have a process in place to basically find, fix, track, target, and engage those Scuds, and then assess how that damage went.
Though their primary missions in Iraq started with Scud hunting, B-1s would often receive additional taskings that supported the advancement of coalition ground forces.
Some of us argued for very early on was expanding the planning and the role of the B-1s out there. Give us a single kind of weapon, particularly the JDAM, the 2,000-pounder, which the B-1 carries 24 of those, and let us provide that 24/7 coverage. Once they got the B-1, once you have this asset available, it's pretty easy to find things to do with it. The phrase that was coined at the CAOC, at the Air Ops Center, was a roving linebacker, which was basically we were fast, we could get across the field, and we could hit anybody at any time.
And again, the B-1s performed superbly. Throughout the course of Operation Iraqi Freedom, they delivered 43% of the JDAMs and flew less than 1% of the total missions. In addition to the traditional kinetic attacks, the B-1 also has protected friendly forces from advancing hostiles by using high-speed shows of force. The mere presence of a B-1 has caused the enemy to reconsider intentions on numerous occasions.
The show of force is basically psychological reasons. It's a big aircraft and it's really loud. Whenever we get into troops in contact, if we have B-1s on station, do a quick show of force and all the firefights stop. We're able to pull the guys out.
Well, having the B-1 overhead for our forces on the ground is first of all an enormous source of reassurance. When the bone is above you, you have a true national asset, in a sense, over your shoulder.
As a result of the significant contributions by the B-1 in the war against terrorism, combatant commanders envision utilizing the bomber even more in solving challenges of an asymmetric fight. In 2006, the U.S. Air Force, Lockheed Martin, and Boeing teams integrated the sniper targeting pod onto the external hardpoints once intended to hold nuclear weapons. This entire program from conception to first deployment took only 15 months to complete.
The B-1 basically was a platform which carried a tremendous amount of capacity, but it did not have the ability to see the enemy on the ground with a electro-optical or infrared capacity like all of the other aircraft that were flying overhead. What I did was ask Air Combat Command to do an urgent needs request back in the summer of 2006 to provide the integration of the sniper pod, our most advanced targeting pod, onto the B-1 to give it this incredible capacity. And we started flying the first combat sorties with the sniper pod integration in the summer of '08.
It's gone, needless to say, from its intended original purpose of a strategic nuclear bomber to being one that actually can provide tactical close air support, time-sensitive and dynamic targeting, ISR support, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance support, especially with the sniper pod that has been added to it in recent years. And all of it, of course, with individuals in the cockpit talking to those on the ground with the advantages that that can provide.
Axeman 3-1, Bone 2-5.
Bone 2-5, go ahead.
Bone 2-5, checking in. 30 nautical miles southeast. 6 GBU-38s, 8 by GBU-31s. Sniper capable, 4 hours of playtime. Axeman 3-1, Bone 2-5 is contacting the enemy convoy 4 miles north of your position. It appears they are leaving the road and setting up in a complex on the south side of the road.
Bone 2-5, Axeman 3-1. We are troops in contact. We're taking fire from the complex. Request immediate strike.
Bone 2-5, in from the south, 1 minute.
Bone 2-5, you are cleared hot.
Bone 2-5, Miller time.
Bone 2-5, all targets successfully executed. You're approved to RTB.
With the conventional capability of the B-1 now battle-tested, combatant commanders are planning on the B-1's inherent capabilities to act as a valuable force multiplier if future conflicts arise.
I think when you look at the range of future conflict that U.S. bomber forces could be called upon to participate in, we see a wide spectrum of conflict. Everything from what we're doing today in Afghanistan, close air support, small numbers of weapons on very important fleeting targets, all the way up through potentially major combat operations against a a state actor.
I think the unique thing about the B-1 that always impressed me, that was so different from the other two platforms, was its speed. And also, you could carry different ordnance in the base. So that gave a lot of flexibility to a combatant commander in what he may have wanted to do to prosecute a particular target.
But maintaining the B-1 and keeping it a reliable contributor to the Department of Defense's arsenal is no easy task.
So one of the big challenges is the fact that the airplane is almost 25 years old, and anything that you have that's this big, this fast, and produces the kind of thrust and the speed and everything that it does, it's trying to shake itself apart. So our challenge is to make sure, if you could imagine a car that you've had for 25 years, that 400,000 pounds going 600 miles an hour, you can imagine there'd be some maintenance you'd have to do on it just to keep it operating. If you don't have parts, you're not going to fly jets. That historically was one of the Achilles heels of the B-1 program. Actually, parts have improved significantly over the last, I'd say, 10 years.
Well, I'd say I think our maintainers pull off a miracle every day. The work they do with the limited resources that we've provided them over the last few years is absolutely incredible. We wouldn't drop a single bomb if our maintainers weren't out there doing the Herculean work that they do.
Through their dedication, maintainers enable the B-1 to fit not only into today's asymmetric fight, but also to play a larger role in the National Long-Range Strike Strategy.
Long-range strike is global power. Global power is one of the three main core elements of the United States Air Force. To enable us to be the power that we are, to be the nation that we are, we need to be able to hold every enemy, everybody out there at abeyance. And that's what long-range strike enables us to do. If we are at Dyess Air Force Base in our B-1 bomber, the world knows that we can take off from that base within a very short period of time and strike anywhere in the world within a 24-hour period of time, and then land back at Dyess Air Force Base. That's a capability that really no one else has.
If you look at the map, the Pacific is huge, and the range of which we must take our forces is immense. So the long-range capability of the B-1 provides us as a platform from Air Combat Command the capability here in the Pacific, if and when we need it here, either for exercise, for limited operations, or full MCO.
With the increased demand for the B-1 by combatant commanders, Pentagon officials have made the decision to invest in the B-1's future. But the price tag for these upgrades is high. By 2003, approximately 30% of the B-1 fleet was retired to the Davis Monthan Boneyard. Additionally, B-1s were consolidated into two operational wings located at Dyess Air Force Base, Texas, and Ellsworth Air Force Base, South Dakota. Today, in conjunction with the Air Force Acquisition, Engineering, and Test Agencies at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Tinker Air Force Base, and Edwards Air Force Base, advanced avionics and weaponry are currently in development at the Boeing facility in Long Beach, California.
We're trying to basically look and see if there's any new technologies or capabilities that are easy to fit in the B-1. And if they're not easy, then we'll help build the program.
You're at a point now when you're looking at the future of the B-1 and what additional equipment it needs. We still need to work on building reliability into the airplane and maintainability. It's still not where we need it to be in that regard. It's doing a whole lot better than it used to be because once we got it into combat and it started to prove its worth, and we started to fund the supply line a little bit better for the airplane.
It's fairly simple, and it's been proven a number of times on the B-1. If you apply the proper resources, if you fund it correctly, if you get enough maintenance manpower out there, if you get the spare parts in the channel, it's a very sustainable airplane.
At the 337th Test and Evaluation Squadron at Dyess Air Force Base, aircrew members are assigned to take new equipment and weapons and approve them for combat operations. Avionic upgrades, accompanied by enhanced displays and an information data link, will increase B-1 aircrew's situational awareness on enemy threats and friendly locations. Also, the B-1 will be able to again shorten the timeline from target recognition to target destruction.
The upgrades that we see coming down the B-1 in the next, say, the next 5 years, will have the fully integrated data link, the FIDDle system. So that's Link 16 and 7 new displays in the back seat. We anticipate that the cockpit is going to evolve. Since you're going to have that glass there, it's kind of a PC-based cockpit, an Ethernet type cockpit. So you'll take some of the good stuff off the laptop. We anticipate that's going to integrate itself into this new controls and display environment.
We fight in major combat operations with large packages. It's not a single platform going in against a single target because there is so much dynamics, there's so much time sensitivities to different things that are happening. And with the threat getting higher and higher, the ability to data link information builds the situational awareness of the aviators that are inside of each of those platforms.
Well, we've added a lot of capability to it already. We're going to continue to integrate other weapons as they come along into it, giving it more capability. It's going to go through a data link upgrade, which will make it even more capable in today's fight, but more so as you look to the future to be integrated into those force packages. Not just for the B-1 to receive information, but for it to also pass on and be integrated into those force packages.
Once a target is identified, B-1s will have a vast array of weapon choices to use. Added to its potent punch of JDAMs, the B-1s have added the Joint Air-to-Surface Standoff Missile, or JASSM.
One of the great things about the B-1, of course, is the fact that you've got JASSM, which gives you an extended range cruise missile capability, which against fixed targets is a great capability and gives you great standoff. You got the ability to stand off out of the threat and get this weapon to penetrate. And that's another great virtue of this airplane. And I think that we'll put that to good use in the future.
The capability to strike targets hundreds of miles away will be critical to our success as adversaries equip themselves with advanced integrated air defense systems, which will limit which aircraft are able to operate within enemy territory. Other future upgrades might even enable the B-1 to carry the second increment of the Small Diameter Bomb, or SDB-2, designed to strike targets such as mobile surface-to-air missiles and other vehicles on the move, even through weather obscurations.
If you look at the target set that most worries commanders into the future, the ones that are the most difficult are mobile targets.
The difference between SDB-1 and SDB-2 is now the SDB-2 gives you a moving target. The other thing with these two particular weapons is they extend the range out, and I would recommend to the Chief that we put it across every platform, B-1s, B-52s, everything that we've got.
Added to these capabilities, engineers at the Air Force Research Lab and Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, are looking into a new phase of warfare and using the B-1 as its operational test model.
We've talked about the flexibility of the bombers. The one thing that's great about them is they can carry a lot of stuff, a lot of payload. And it's easy, relatively easy to put stuff on them. One of the futures we're looking at is lasers, directed energy that we call in broad terms. But a high energy laser slung in one of the bomb bays that then can be used to take out targets.
We've got a really exciting project that we've started out, and it's I should say a consortium that includes ACC, it includes the Air Armament Center, it includes AFRL, and it even includes DARPA. And it's taking a laser that DARPA has developed and containerizing it and putting it into a module that we can put in the forward bay of the B-1. It's essentially an unlimited magazine. We're shooting for putting in the B-1 in about 5 years.
So, future combat? Sure. Look at where we've gone with bombs. Cold War, we started with multi-megatons, and we got progressively smaller and smaller. Now we're going to small diameter bomb. We're getting so precise, we don't need all that extra energy to kill the target, which damages everything else around that maybe we don't want to damage. So now here's your ultimate pinpoint killer.
Leading the path to advancing the B-1 into the future is the 77th Weapon Squadron. Here, new tactics on new equipment and weapons are developed by a select few of highly trained B-1 aviators.
The weapon school experience obviously trains a small elite cadre of weapon school graduates to go out there and teach the rest of their community how it's done. What the course involves is everything from basic airmanship, basic weapon systems, all the way up through advanced integration and advanced tactics, and including the ME phase, the mission employment phase.
The new tactics that are developed at the weapons school are run through their paces at large force exercises on the ranges located outside of Nellis Air Force Base.
ME has evolved over the years to basically what I would call large force exercise, kind of a red flag light, to today it's really a red flag on steroids. And what we do is we'll bring all the different airframes and capabilities to ME and give them a taste of the operational level and how to accomplish some really tough tactical problems, integrating with all the different capabilities across our domains of space, air, and cyber.
With the development of these modern tactics and the integration of newly fielded upgrades, the B-1 continues to evolve. However, the goal has and always will remain the same: prepare for peace. But if diplomacy fails and the nation calls, the B-1 is ready to go into harm's way and defend the vital interest of the United States.
Phone 25, cleared to land. Welcome home.
The first 25 years of the B-1 have been an exciting ride. We've transformed it from a deterrent weapon of last resort to the weapon of choice for ongoing combat operations today.
My name is Dean Higginbotham.
Scott Higginbotham. Well, it's a great honor for me to be able to fly the same aircraft that my dad flew, and you know, it's something that I look back on. My dad and his group that laid the foundation for us for what we're doing now.
We have something that we can share that not many other people can share. That we flew the same airplane, not necessarily in the same mission, but we flew the same airplane. It makes me very, very proud of him. I'm always proud of him, but particularly proud that I can share this with him.
The future for the B-1 is very bright. Our Air Force will continue to invest in the B-1 to improve its weapon systems, to improve its internal avionics, so that it can continue to meet the needs of our combatant commanders, so that it will continue as a weapon system to be able to deter our enemies, and when deterrence fails, to be able to kill them.
And we're not done yet. We plan to fly the B-1 well into the 21st century and continue to evolve its awesome global power to meet and defeat America's future national security challenges. Tower, phone 25, ready for takeoff.
Phone 25 Heavy, cleared for takeoff.
Well, let me just say to all the members of B-1 Nation on this, the 25th anniversary of the Bone, well done, congratulations.
You have saved thousands of friendly lives, and you have sent thousands of the enemy on their way.
It's the air crews, it's the maintainers, it's the suppliers.
Thank you for the service that you are rendering to your country.
And always to the families.
The families.
We thank their families for the sacrifices they make.
And as I understand it today, there's a B-1B in the air as we speak, at all times. So that's a wonderful, wonderful tribute to the airplane, to the men and women who built it, and to our military that's using it.
We're very proud of you, we're proud of the airplane, we're proud of the heritage and the history, and we certainly look forward to the next 25 years of the B-1 in the fight.
It's been a remarkable journey, and I'm proud to be serving with you now in today's fight, and then as we continue to march to the future and doing great things for this nation. So thank you again for everything that you're doing.
The B-1 has been a true workhorse for our combat air forces for more than 25 years. Battle-tested and battle-proven, the B-1 has shown itself to be one of the most versatile platforms, not only in delivering exceptional firepower, but critical surveillance data as well. The success of this platform is reflective of our professional cadre of B-1 aviators, maintainers, and sustainers. These dedicated airmen have elevated the B-1 from its traditional role, helping ensure it remains as potent in today's fight as it was when first employed. Thank you for your service and for your tenacity and adaptability. Because of you, we are able to protect the forces on the ground with even more warfighting capability.